Well, Dhamma greetings, everyone. I was asked once whether the word Sāsanārakkha can be found in the suttas. And if so, what did the guardians of the Sāsana do at that time to deserve such a name? Well, honestly speaking, the word Sāsanārakkha cannot be found in the Pali Suttas, nor can they be found in the commentaries. It is my creation that I invented when I conceived of SPS. However, it was inspired by several passages from the Pali scriptures. And the first one can be found in the great chapter of the Vinaya Mahavagga. You see, the Vinaya Pitaka has got 5 books. The first 2 books are details about the Patimokkha for monks and nuns. And the third book is the Mahavagga. And this Mahavagga, the great book or the great division, is about all the monastic protocols and etiquettes, the minor rules that are not found in the Patimokkha. But at the beginning of this third book, there is this great chapter which chronicles the Buddha's enlightenment and his missionary career, starting from the first few people whom he converted. So at the end of this great chapter, there is a versified summary of the topics that were covered in the first chapter, this great chapter. In the beginning of this versified summary of the topics that were covered, there is this passage: when the suttas are forgotten and the Abhidhamma too at the same time, but the Vinaya is not lost, the Sāsana still remains. So this is what struck me when I read it. And then when you come to the commentary to the Vinaya Pitaka, at the beginning of the commentary, it describes the circumstances under which the first council or the first synod was held, the first great mass recitation. In Pali, we call it the Sanghiti. Sanghiti means, Sang means together, Giti means song, singing together, which means to say that they are reciting the remembered, memorized teachings of the Buddha together in unison. And they are reciting it in a melodious way. That's why it's called a Gita, a Giti, which is actually singing. So the beginning of the commentary to the Vinaya Pitaka talks about the circumstances under which this first council or Sanghiti was convened by Bhante Aggacitta. So after the Buddha had passed away and he had been cremated, and then the ashes were distributed among different clans and countries in India at the time, different kingdoms at the time, then Venerable Aggacitta called the monks together and told them that we must start to recite the Dhamma Vinaya that the Buddha had taught us for the sake of posterity, for future generations, in order to preserve the Buddha's teachings. And so when he got them together, he asked the monks, well, Avuso, where shall we start? Shall we start with the suttas first, or shall we start with the Vinaya? And the monk said, the Vinaya is the life of the Buddha Sāsana. When the Vinaya stands, the Sāsana stands. Therefore, let us first do choral chanting of the Vinaya. That was the commentary to the Vinaya Pitaka. Now, the commentary to the Parajika, number 1, which is the first grave offense that the bhikkhu can commit, talks about an expert in the Vinaya who should try to settle certain legal cases. For example, whether a person has committed the first parajika or not. So he was talking about the qualities of a Vinayadhara or Vinaya expert, the monastic lawyer. And one of the qualities is that the Vinayadhara, the Vinaya expert, the monastic lawyer, must be one who is conscientious himself. Because if you are very learned, but you are not conscientious, you can bend the truth to suit your own biases and prejudices. While the commentaries was giving the reason why being conscientious is one of the qualities of a monastic lawyer, they cried out 3 times. In the future, the conscientious shall guard the Sāsana. In the future, the conscientious shall guard the Sāsana. In the future, the conscientious shall guard the Sāsana. So this is found in the Vinaya Pitaka. But conditions for the perpetuation of the good Dhamma can also be found in the suttas. Whereas the Vinaya Pitaka is about monastic rules and regulations, monastic law and conventions, the suttas talk about the perpetuation of the good Dhamma in various ways. There is a series of 3 suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Fives, suttas number 154, 155, and 156, which talk about these various conditions, and I'm going to combine 154 and 155 together so that we don't have too many slides. So the Buddha said that if monks don't do these things, then this will conduce to the decline of the good Dhamma. But if the monks were to do these things, and altogether there are 8 of them, a composite of the 2 suttas, it's basically about learning the Dhamma. The bhikkhus should respectfully listen to the Dhamma, learn the Dhamma, memorize it, recite it, examine the meanings and the teachings, and then practice according to your own understanding. And after that, then the monk should preach the Dhamma to the lay people and teach the Dhamma in detail to the monks. Also, the difference between preaching to lay people and teaching the Dhamma in detail, because they are at 2 different levels. The teachings given to monks will be more technical and more detailed. Then in Sutta number 156, this is about the conduct of bhikkhus. And first it says that bhikkhus should be easy to correct, and they should possess qualities that make them easy to correct. They are patient and accept instruction respectfully. Well, this may not be the case nowadays, I guess because of our culture. Many years ago, when I first started SBS, a well-known local Thai monk, Ajahn Javana, at that time, he came to SBS to visit me, and he said, you're thinking of starting a monk training center. Nowadays, monks are like rabbits. You raise your voice louder, and then next day, they're already gone somewhere else. Well, that's it. I don't disagree with that. Because if you go to very traditional Theravadan Buddhist countries, the monks and the Sāmanēras and the monks, they are brought up in a culture where they're very meek and docile. They are very obedient and they respect their teachers with fear and admiration. Well, I mean, there are pros and cons, If your teacher happens to be not someone who follows the true Dhamma, then you are led the wrong way. There's no way for you to disagree with something which is not according to the Dhamma. But in any case, even if a monk were to disagree with a senior monk regarding some points, he should do so in a polite way and not rudely, and not try to be sarcastic, as some people tend to be. The second part is that the elders are not luxurious and lax, but they take lead in solitude and continue to strive for higher attainments. When one becomes well known, have many followers, one has become an elder, has a lot of seniority, then one is showered by many gifts from one's devotees and supporters. So many elders tend to become lax and enjoy the luxury rather than continue to strive for what has not yet been attained. So this is also a cause for decline. So that's why the Buddha said that the elders who are already showered by admiration and gifts by the lay people, by the devotees, should not become complacent, but should also look for solitude and not be gregarious and have fun with lay devotees, and to strive also for higher attainments. The next one comes from two sources, which I combine into one. One is from Bhante Aggacitta, the one who convened the first Sangha. Well, at that time, he approached the Buddha and asked the Buddha, why is it now that there are so many more rules and yet less people who get enlightened? And then the Buddha said, well, it's not because of anything, but it's because the bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, and male and female lay followers do certain things which cause the decline of the good Dhamma. If they do the reverse, for example, if all Buddhists, whether monastics or lay, were to dwell with reverence and deference towards the teacher, towards the Dhamma, towards the Sangha, towards the training, towards concentration, heedfulness, and hospitality, then the good Dhamma will continue long after the Tathagata, after the Buddha has entered final Nibbana. So these are things which are not explained in detail in the suttas. So we have to resort to the commentaries to find out how to dwell with reverence and deference towards the teacher. And this is what the commentaries recommend. That when the teacher is still alive, a bhikkhu goes to his presence at the 3 times. He does not walk with footwear when the teacher is walking without footwear. He does not walk at a higher level than the teacher. He does not stay above the teacher. If the teacher is staying downstairs, he should not stay upstairs. And he does not cover both shoulders or carry an umbrella or wear footwear, bathe or defecate or urinate within sight of the teacher. These are the things that the commentators recommend in relation to dwelling with reverence and deference towards the teacher. Going to his presence 3 times a day, not wearing footwear when he is not wearing, and then not to walk at a higher level than the teacher, not to stay above the teacher, and not to cover both shoulders or carry an umbrella or wear footwear or bathe or defecate or urinate within sight of the teacher. After the teacher's demise, like now, he is represented by the shrine. And so, after the teacher's demise, a bhikkhu is supposed to go to the shrine at the 3 times. And again, he does not walk with footwear in the precincts of the shrine. He does not stay above the shrine. He does not cover both shoulders, carry an umbrella, wear footwear, bathe, defecate, or urinate within sight of the shrine. And from the commentary of Samyutta Nikaya, he adds one more item, which is that when you are around the presence of a shrine, you should not be looking here and there, engaging in conversation. That's the reason why in the Burmese tradition, in some strict Burmese traditions, whenever they have a Buddha image, they always have a curtain. When they are doing some activities which are not according to these recommendations by the commentaries, then they would close the curtain so that the Buddha is not visible. For example, nowadays, We have huge Buddha images in halls in our Buddhist societies. And of course, Buddhist societies also have other extracurricular activities like yoga or qigong or tai chi or something like that. And when these are being performed in front of the Buddha image, then this is considered dwelling without reference and deference towards the teacher. So what should be done is to install a curtain to cover up the Buddha image when these activities are being performed. And that's why in SBS I designed a special screen to cover up our Buddha image in the multi-purpose hall when we have such events. As you can see, when we were having a stretching exercise, a stretching workshop conducted by Kit Laffin, we had the Buddha image covered up. Otherwise, when we have a proper Dhamma event, like a meditation session or a Dhamma talk, then we leave it open. Similarly, in our kutis, we have a curtain covering the Buddha image. And we are supposed to open up the curtain when we are properly dressed and we are paying respect to the Buddha. Otherwise, it just becomes an ornament. Now, how do we dwell with reverence and deference towards the Dhamma? When the time for listening to Dhamma has been proclaimed, the bhikkhu respectively goes to listen. He does not fall asleep in the Dhamma hall, he doesn't nod away, and he sits without engaging in conversation with other people, but listens quietly and intently. And he respectfully grasps the Dhamma, understands the Dhamma. And after that, he will respectfully teach the Dhamma once he has understood it in theory and practice. Right? So these are the items that should be taken into consideration when you are thinking about this quality of dwelling with reverence and deference towards the Dhamma. Now, how do we dwell with reverence and deference towards the Sangha? This is a monastic etiquette and protocol that when one is in a group of monks, a bhikkhu should not preach the Dhamma or should not sit or answer a question without being asked to by the senior-most monk. And that's why you can see that some monks are very well brought up in monasteries where they understand this principle. So sometimes the thera forgets, so the monk will ask permission to sit down or ask permission to speak if he's not asked by the thera to do so. Also, he does not offend other bhikkhus who are his seniors by walking, standing, sitting, especially sitting while grasping his knees or with cloth wrapped round his knees and back. Wrapping the cloth round the knees and back was an ancient practice supposed to give you some sort of comfort, I guess, when they don't have an armchair or a backrest. So nowadays also sometimes you see lay people, when they're listening to Dhamma talk, sitting, grasping their knees together. Yeah, this is considered impolite, irreverent from the Buddhist point of view. And in the midst of the Sangha, he does not cover both shoulders, nor does he carry an umbrella, wear footwear, or fidget with his limbs. And here it says that disrespect towards even one bhikkhu becomes disrespect done towards the Sangha nonetheless. These are the qualities that needs to be cultivated if one wants to dwell with reverence and deference toward the Sangha. Now, how do we dwell with reverence and deference towards the training? Here it means fulfilling the three trainings of Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, whether you're a layperson or a monk. And to dwell with reverence and deference toward concentration means producing or striving to produce the 8 attainments, the 4 jhanas and the 4 ayatanas, the arupas. and how to dwell with reverence and deference towards heedfulness, that is, trying to maintain continuity of mindfulness. Whatever Dhamma practice that you are pursuing, you should try to maintain continuity of your mindfulness in doing that. And then what is meant by to dwell with reverence and deference towards hospitality? That is, by giving the tangible. This refers to monks also. When monks are staying in a monastery, they are allowed to give to certain classes of people. For example, somebody who has ran out of provisions and he comes to the monastery, or he could be a very dangerous robber or terrorist, and he comes and you have to appease him by giving him things, tangible things. Although a monk is not supposed to give things to lay people. But these are not Buddhists. They are coming to the monastery to loot or to rob, so you have to appease them or else you will get into trouble. You can also respectively give intangible. So what do monks do? They teach the suttas and the canonical teachings and explain the meaning and preach the Dhamma to lay people and monks as well. Yeah, if monks share the Dhamma among themselves, have Dhamma discussions, this is dwelling with reverence and deference towards hospitality. Or when they're invited to houses for dāna, then they also share the Dhamma. And finally, this one is probably the most, I guess, the most straightforward and easy in the sense of only one thing, but difficult in the sense of practice. A certain Brahmin one day approached the Buddha and asked him a similar question. What is the cause and what is the reason why the Sāsana can last a long time after the Buddha has passed away? And the Buddha answered, because the four establishments of mindfulness are developed and cultivated, that the good Dhamma continues long after a Tathagata has attained final Nibbana. And finally, this is something which will always be there, whether in the past or in the future. Householders and homeless alike, each a support for the other. Both accomplish the true Dhamma, the unsurpassed security from bondage. From householders, the homeless receive robes, lodgings, and protection from inclemencies. And depending on those well gone, home-loving householders have faith in Arahants, those who meditate with noble wisdom. Having practiced the Dhamma here, the path leading to good destinations, delighting in the Deva world, they rejoice, those who desire sensual pleasures. So there is always a symbiotic relationship between the Sangha and the laity, because the Sangha is entirely dependent on the laity for their physical support. At the same time, the laity also need to depend on the Sangha, who are the guardians of the Sāsana, because they are the ones who transmitted the teachings of the Buddha for more than 2,500 years. Without the transmission of the Dhamma orally and through written works, and now digitally by the members of the Sangha, then the good Dhamma would have disappeared long, long ago. And yet, they cannot do so without support from the lay people. So that's why lay people who support the good Sangha, they are actually also guardians of the Sāsana. They also help to protect the Sāsana so that the good Dhamma can last long. If the monks are healthy, then the Sāsana will become healthy too. By healthy, I mean that as lay people, you should also understand nutrition. In the old days, the monks survived on alms food, and they go begging for food. But in those days, all the food that they begged, that they got, were organic. Nowadays, when we go for alms round in the markets, we get a lot of junk food. So in my personal opinion, I think that under present circumstances, it may not really be very healthy for Sangha members to go out to collect alms food when they are all mostly junk food and are very deleterious to their own health. You see, if the Sangha is unhealthy, then who suffers? Not only do the Sangha members suffer, the lay people also need to support the Sangha members, and then they will also suffer because the Sangha member will not be able to perform its duty of practicing, teaching, propagating the Dhamma. So that's why please have your discretion and try to give healthy food, healthy, nutritious food to the Sangha members. And also give things which are required by the Sangha instead of giving things which are not required, not because you want to really support the Sangha, but because you want the merits of giving. Yeah, sometimes, of course, you have to make a compromise. Sometimes you really need the merits, but the monks don't need the requisites. I guess, there are so many people who need the merits, and there are so few monks who are virtuous enough or who are well qualified to give you the merits by receiving the gifts from you. I hope that lay people can exercise the discretion when they want to give things to monks, and if possible, try to ask first before you give. In conclusion, I hope that both the Sangha and the laity can aspire to live up to the high standards recommended by the Buddha and the commentaries and become ideal guardians of the Sāsana for the long-term welfare and happiness of gods and men, of all beings for a long, long time.